Thanksgiving was supposed to be a day of gratitude, laughter, and family warmth, but nothing could have prepared anyone for the shock that would rip through the Dupree household. In the midst of festive cheer, an impossible figure appeared, shattering years of grief and certainty. Barbara, long presumed dead, was alive, and she had returned. Hearts stopped. Minds reeled. Secrets that were buried, lies that had been carefully constructed, and the fragile trust that held the family together were all suddenly exposed to the harsh light of reality. In that single, unforgettable moment, the Dupree family would discover that the past is never truly gone, and the truth can be more dangerous than any fiction. Anita's breath hitched as she stared at the figure in the doorway, a woman she had mourned like a sacred secret, whose absence had carved hollows in her heart. Barbara, alive. The revelation struck her like lightning, leaving her momentarily paralyzed in disbelief. The warm glow of the Thanksgiving lights, the bright decorations, the soft laughter of family and friends, all of it blurred into a surreal haze. In that suspended moment, the room seemed to tilt, as though the very foundation of her reality was giving way. A torrent of emotions crashed over her. First came shock, a physical, dizzying wave that made her knees weak. Then a colder truth settled in, settling over her lungs like a stone: betrayal. How long had everyone allowed her to believe Barbara was gone? How had so many lied so well? Her heart pounded, each beat echoing her confusion and rage. She felt as though she was watching herself from a distance, her body betraying her mind as the overwhelming sense of disorientation took hold. Inside, turmoil roiled. Anita's mind replayed every memory she had of Barbara. The laughter, the shared confidences, the late-night whispers in the darkness. She remembered Barbara's steady warmth, the way she had championed the family, how she had seemed like an anchor. And now she was back, standing there, vital, breathing, conscious. Her presence upended everything Anita thought she had known. But along with shock came anger, searing and raw, burning with the intensity of a betrayal that pierced through the heart like a blade. Why would Barbara let them all believe she was dead? Why would she vanish without a trace, leaving Anita to grieve, to rebuild, to pretend? The pain of abandonment twisted through her chest like barbed wire. She felt insulted, humiliated. She wondered if her grief had been manipulated, if the ostensibly loving and supportive family she trusted had been complicit in some terrible deception. She realized that this was no mere resurrection, it was a confrontation. Barbara's return was deliberate, not accidental. The timing, the location, Thanksgiving, a day of gratitude, of unity. The choice of this moment felt like a scalpel, slicing through the facade of normalcy the Dupree family had tried so hard to maintain. Anita's inner voice raged, "You let me grieve. You watched me mourn you so everyone could pretend this was acceptable." She wondered if Barbara's return was a power play, an assertion of control. Release. Redemption. Revenge. She could not tell which. Her mind flickered through possible motives: guilt, fear, manipulation, defiance. It was all too theatrical, too planned. The laughter in the room dimmed into a distant hum, like she was alone in a vast echo chamber of her own anguish. At the same time, she sympathized with the idea that Barbara might have had her reasons. What if she had been in danger? What if she had needed time apart to protect them, or to heal herself? But even if that were the case, the deception stung like acid. Every silent tear Anita had shed, every desperate prayer she whispered in the dark, had it been in vain, or worse, had it fueled a lie? In the periphery of her vision, other faces shifted, family members frozen in shock, eyebrows raised, mouths parted. There was Vernon, her husband, his posture rigid, jaw clenched, an older man whose composure never wavered, now visibly shaken. There was Nicole, Barbara's daughter, whose anguish mirrored her mother's entrance, but laced with confusion and betrayal. And Danny, always fiery, as though her veins carried molten resentment, tightening like a drawn bowstring. Anita's heart ached with conflicting loyalty. Barbara was family, mother figure, confidant, friend. But her return felt like a threat, a rebellion. The safe world Anita had labored to rebuild, with steady hands and cautious trust, could collapse in an instant. She feared that everything she fought so hard to protect, the family's reputation, their unity, even her own sense of identity, might unravel now. Anita's mind spiraled through the darkest possibilities. What if Barbara's reappearance was just the beginning? What if she planned to reclaim control, to displace those who had moved on? What if she demanded restitution for years of absence, for the grief she had sown? And just as painfully, what if she wanted nothing? She just wanted to be seen, to be understood, to insert herself back into a life she abandoned? Betrayal clung to her like a second skin. She remembered how she had held family meetings in Barbara's absence, how she had taken on responsibilities, made decisions, counseled others, not out of ego, but necessity. She had become the pillar. And now, faced with Barbara's return, she felt unworthy, exposed, replaced. In that grand, glittering room, laughter and clinking glasses seemed to mock her pain. The artificial cheer of Thanksgiving pressed in on her with suffocating force. She felt each smile around her as an accusation. Did you think you could erase me? Did you want me gone? As the initial shock faded, a colder resolve settled in Anita's bones. If Barbara had come back to reclaim something, she would not surrender without a fight. She would make Barbara understand that absence had consequences. That reality was not as forgiving as she might have believed. Yet, beneath that steely resolve, a trembling vulnerability stirred. Anita feared what might happen if she met Barbara face to face. Would she break down? Would she demand explanations, or forgive? The ambiguity tormented her. Her mind raced through all the possible confrontations, all the possible outcomes, reconciliation, war, deeper fractures. Barbara's eyes met hers, and in that single moment, the room held its breath. Anita saw something there, remorse or cold calculation, she couldn't yet tell. A glimmer of apology? Or defiance? She wasn't sure. But she knew that this was a reckoning, not a homecoming. In her mind's eye, she replayed every decision she had made in Barbara's absence, how she had protected the family's public image, how she had mediated disputes, how she had steadied the household. She recalled how friends and family had rallied around her, but also how whispers had lingered. Was Barbara ever really gone? Some had speculated, some had asked questions, but most had eventually bowed to the narrative she carefully maintained. Now, the narrative lay in ruins. And Anita wondered, was she to blame for believing too well, or was Barbara to blame for deceiving so thoroughly? Her anger grew. The taste of betrayal hardened in her throat. She resented that Barbara had stolen years from them, not just time, but presence, guidance, influence. She resented that she had built a life of responsibility in Barbara's shadow, uncertain whether she was doing it for the sake of the family or to fill a void the departed woman had left. More than anything, she resented the injustice. If Barbara returned, she deserved accountability. She deserved truth. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that accountability might not be offered gently. Barbara might resist, might deflect. And what if the rest of the family, who had relied on Anita so heavily, rallied to Barbara's side? That possibility made her blood run cold. The quiet hum of conversations resumed, subtly shifted, some whispers, some fearful glances, some stunned recognition. But among them all, only one thing felt certain to Anita: nothing would ever be the same again. The walls she had built to protect the family, to safeguard her own heart, now seemed fragile. The foundation had been shaken. And yet, even in her bitterest anger, a flicker of longing remained, a guilty, fragile ember. She missed Barbara. She missed the companionship, the counsel, the grandmotherly guidance she once offered. But she also feared what she had become in that longing, vulnerable, exposed, perhaps manipulated. In the silence that followed Barbara's entrance, Anita's mind made a decision. She would not let the chaos consume her. She would assert herself, not violently, but confidently. She would demand the truth, piece by piece, no matter how ugly. She would force Barbara to confront what she had done. She would not shy away from the wounds that had festered. But she also realized she might need to protect something more than pride, the family's cohesion, fragile as it now seemed. There was a reckoning to come, but also a choice. She could wield her anger as a weapon, or use it to carve a path towards something new, however painful. And so Anita stood there, rooted in the center of the room, her chest tight, her heart pounding, resolved to turn betrayal into accountability, confusion into clarity. Barbara's return might have been the spark that threatened to destroy everything, but for Anita, it was also the moment she would draw a line in the sand. A pivot point. A challenge. Because she was not helpless. She was not broken. She was more alive than ever in her fury, in her grief, in her fear. And when the storm came, she would meet it, not as a victim, but as the woman who had borne the weight of her absence, and now demanded justice. In that Thanksgiving gathering, with voices hushed and hearts trembling, the family Dupree realized that forgiveness would not come easily. The truths Barbara carried with her would have to be spoken. The wounds she left behind would have to be healed, or reopened, depending on what they all were truly willing to face. And whatever happened next, Anita vowed that she would not disappear in someone else's story. She would write her own.